Welcome to the Guatemala mission team. I'm Dr. Stoley, Rand Stoley. I'm the team leader, and I'm very happy to have you aboard on our mission to Guatemala, October 9th through the 19th of this coming year. I'm sorry if you couldn't make it to our orientation, but I think this will be sufficient substitute. So where are we going? Well, we're going to Guatemala, which is in Central America. It is the former capital of the Spanish Empire in all of Central America. We'll be working out of Guatemala City, which is the capital of Guatemala. We'll spend a short time in Antigua for tourism purposes. But why Guatemala? Why have we decided to go there? Well, it has to do with the fact that Guatemala is one of the poorest areas in our hemisphere. 68% of indigenous children under 5 suffer chronic malnutrition, and most rural Guatemalans, or the Mayans, are unable to obtain health care in any other way. This is the typical house for a Guatemalan. It has cornstalk walls and corrugated steel roof. Typically they have their kitchen inside the house, and that means the fire's there and they are breathing the smoke, and so are the children that are oftentimes on the mother's back or very close by. And life there is hard. It involves quite a bit of work and lifting, and you can see this guy going up the mountain that probably has 300 pounds on his back. I first got involved with Guatemala through a man named Dave Hipsch, who is from Purim, and he was a missionary in Guatemala. He started an organization called Common Hope, and I met him when he was at our Rotary Club in Purim, and I sponsored Juan, who was shown in that previous picture. Sponsorship allows the children to go to school and stay in school. Most kids in Guatemala do not achieve more than a 6th grade education, and many come far short of that because they're put to work right away and they're needed, but his program allows them to stay in school. Our Rotary then got involved and helped sponsor many of the projects that go on at Common Hope, and so that's the kind of tie that we had. I attended a international convention of Rotary and tried to find a person who could help me get involved in mission work in surgery, and I got connected to Frank Peterson of Partner for Surgery, who's the second from the right in this picture. And he helped me by getting me first on a triage trip in which I would go out to rural areas of Guatemala and help them find patients that needed surgery. The triage sometimes meant that you scheduled people for surgery, as this child on the left, and other times it meant that they had no surgery available and you had to tell them that, as in the child on the right who has hydrocephalus. There are many obstacles to surgery in Guatemala. One is the long wait to get surgery. There's a long distance that they have to travel to get there. There's an unfortunate problem with racism there, in that the Mayan population is discriminated against by the more powerful Hispanic population. There's a lot of poverty, and of course there's a shortage of healthcare providers. So all these things lead to very few people obtaining surgery. And I would actually say that the most common problem is fear. Now later I joined a Canadian team called Project Hands to do surgery there, and we made several trips together with them. We developed this clinic called Centro de Salud Barbara from just an empty shell of an OR into an operating room that was fully functional. We used our local Rotary Club and Frank Peterson's Rotary Club in Virginia to obtain matching grants to buy a lot of used equipment that we brought down. I sent a team from our local Purim Rotary down there who did a yeoman's job installing this equipment. They were not medical people, but they had the help of Joe Lyer, who is our MacGyver, to help them get it all installed and make sure it was functional. And when we arrived just a week or two later, this is what we found: a functional operating room that was ready for us to do some missions. And we've done several missions at that location in the recent past. So what should you expect for this coming year? Well, first you can expect a lot of smiling faces. They are extremely grateful people. You can also expect that there's going to be a lot of work. This is a surgical mission, and we try and accomplish as much as we possibly can during the time that we're there. So now it's time to start to think about getting ready to go and what steps you need to take to get there. First and foremost, you need to make sure that you have a passport. We can't even schedule your flight without a passport, so if you do not have a passport already, now is the time to absolutely make sure that you have one ordered or in the process. There will be a lot of paperwork, unfortunately. As the years have gone by in our missions, more and more things have been required of us, and one of these is a volunteer participation form that you'll have to sign and get back to me. There'll be a lot of communications that we do. You can scan these and then email them to me. All nursing or medical professionals will need to have a curriculum vitae, their license and diploma. We'll have to actually have these notarized, and I am working on the details of what needs to be done there, but I will send more details as time passes. Just first start by locating these documents, because it is mandatory that we have them. The vaccinations that you will need include the standard things you would need in the United States, like tetanus, hepatitis, MMR, and typhoid. In terms of malaria, we're going to be above 4,000 feet for all of our time there, so you will not need to have malaria prophylaxis. If you have any concerns about this, you should probably see the Sanford Health Travel Clinic. All the supplies that we use will be bringing down ourselves, and so I'm in the process of gathering those supplies as we speak. You need to learn Spanish? Not necessarily. We will have translators with us who will be able to get us through, and we have the help of Partner for Surgery. You will not be able to bring a full suitcase as you might think for a trip like this. We're only going to have you bring carry-on luggage because we will assign you to carry a suitcase of supplies. You do want to bring some cold weather clothes because we're at high altitudes. I don't think you'll need sheets or pillowcases. Those should be provided. Some basic supplies are also listed here. This whole list will be in an orientation document that I will send to you, so you don't need to worry about writing it down. Basic medications like Pepto-Bismol or Imodium are useful if you have food indiscretions while you're there. You'll need your own toiletries, and if you are a nurse or a physician, bring your own stethoscope. So obviously you can't pack like this. On our first trip, when I brought a nurse with me, we, between us, had these supplies. Those red bins are the medical supplies. Even the suitcases you see are full of medical supplies. Only the small little packs were the luggage we have for our clothing. So no, you can't carry a pack on like this. Make sure you know the limits of size for the overhead bins, as they are strictly enforced. Also, the TSA will enforce carry-on liquids, so make sure you read their rules about how large liquids you can bring and how many. Don't forget your cameras, and even more importantly, don't forget to bring your charger for your battery, as well as cables to attach to the computer. I like to download pictures from everybody on the team so I can make a DVD of all the pictures and distribute to everybody. So we'll begin our travel by flying out of Minneapolis. Some of you flying from other places will have your own arrangements. Please make all arrangements for flights through me so that we can make sure that we coordinate our arrival times. We will be leaving very early in the morning and arriving around noon Guatemala time. That's the usual pattern anyway. The hardest part of this mission is getting through customs. It helps if we have everything organized in advance, so make sure you get your paperwork in, and that will help us quite a bit. Once we get through customs, then we will gather again outside of the airport and take a van or two to Antigua. We will have a short tourist stop in Antigua. Antigua is a World Heritage Site, and so quite a nice place to tour. Most of the restaurants in Antigua are quite safe, and I don't think a lot of precautions are necessary there, but sometimes if you get into smaller areas, you'll find that there is quite a bit of risk, and so I advise you to avoid any uncooked foods. Don't eat any salad or raw vegetables. Avoid even the ice or tap water, as they're consistently contaminated. I would use only bottled water, and even the water in your shower isn't safe to get into your mouth. So only drink bottled water, and even use bottled water to brush your teeth. Also, I'd avoid any dairy products, and all street vendors are considered unsafe. In general, in Guatemala, you have to be ready for anything. The picture on the right is the small vehicle that picked us up for one of our trips when we had all the luggage. Sometimes we'll ride on a chicken bus, which is a common mode of transportation there. The hotels are generally good, but not high standard. They're probably like a Motel 6 or Super 8 in the United States. On Friday, we'll make a visit to Common Hope, so everybody gets a chance to see what that project is all about. We usually make visits to the homes of sponsored children. So if you have a sponsored child, please let me know, and we will try and make arrangements for you to meet up with them. And if not, you'll join others who do have sponsored children and see what the program is all about up close. In the evenings, we will have a team dinner, and we'll get to know each other better at that time than we can even before we leave. On Saturday, then, we'll travel again back to Guatemala City to some lodging that they will have for us. I do not have any pictures of the hotel we'll be in, but you can expect it to be, again, a little bit more rustic than maybe you're usually used to, and this is part of what it takes to adjust to serving in the mission field. The water's not always hot. The accommodations should be clean at least, and they're quite functional. And on Saturday morning, we're going to start getting to work right away. And by that, we'll go visit the hospital and start getting our work areas ready. Those work areas include triage, administration, CSR, OR, recovery, and pharmacy, and we'll kind of go over that in detail. Some people will be involved in triage, but those that aren't involved in triage will begin by setting up. That means opening the bins, finding the equipment that belongs with their work area, and getting it ready. The rest of us will be working on triage. Now, as I mentioned, the partner for surgery has already done the triage to some degree for us, so most of these patients will need surgery. But we will be checking to just be sure that they know what they're in for, and that they do indeed have the problem that we can solve. And then have a risk discussion with them. Take them to the administration people, who will then schedule the surgery. Meanwhile, CSR will be setting up the autoclave area, and this is a picture of the Guatemala City hospital CSR. Some of these pictures are more from our former place that we used to go to. The pre-op nurses will be the ones that help identify the patient, get the IV started, and make sure the consents are signed and all that appropriate paperwork is ready. We will have people whose only job is translation, and we do sometimes have to translate through two translators. Here is a gerentes, who is somebody who will help translate from Guatemalan to Spanish, and then from Spanish to English. The patients will, from the pre-op area, take the walk to the OR. Anesthesia will use a number of different techniques, whether they be spinal, general anesthesia, or very often local and sedation. The operating room team will have the typical things you expect in the United States in terms of sterility and safety. but maybe a decade or two older than the equipment we've had. Nonetheless, it should be quite functional again. After the patients leave the operating room, then we'll go to the recovery area, and this is a photograph of the recovery area in the Guatemala City hospital we will use right here. They'll spend maybe an hour in recovery and then go out to a general ward of some kind where we will have our post-op nurses looking after them and getting them to the point where they have good pain control, can walk and eat and urinate, and then we can send them to a housing facility nearby where they will be staying sometimes a night or two before they go back to their homes. The surgery we will do there will include some minor surgery, what I call lumps and bumps, but even these little small things can have a big impact on the patient's lifestyle and quality of life. We'll have somebody designated for pharmacy. That's usually somebody who's non-medical, who will just make sure that we have the pain pills organized. The mornings before surgery, we'll make rounds on the patients that we did operations on in the day or two before, and just make sure everything's going okay. And then off the patients go to home, and sometimes they go home in the back of a truck or on a chicken bus. Many will have to walk the last mile or so of their journey. So we need to know that they're going to do well. When they get home, they won't have any other sources of health care, so they really have to be expected to thrive, and so we'll set them up well. Some of our experience may involve teaching medical students or student nurses, and so don't be surprised if you're working alongside of a native Guatemalan, and that's part of improving healthcare into the future. Some of the surgeries we'll see there are things that you would never see in the United States, like this. I didn't know what to do with it, but we managed somehow, and these kind of ganglion cysts are not uncommon because they're just neglected there. Some surgeries you don't think would be life-changing, but something like this might keep this girl from being able to be eligible to get married. And a simple little surgery for us, it can be quite life-changing. We'll see things that you might think, well, man, is that ever neglected? Why didn't they take care of that before? Well, it's because they just didn't have the opportunity to get things taken care of. We'll see lipomas or lumps and bumps that are in odd locations, places we don't usually see them in the United States, and that has to do with differences in the lifestyle there. Here is an unusual basal cell carcinoma that we removed, and the patient is on the right. You see her about a year later after we've taken it off. These little cysts are in funny locations, and I think it has to do with the headbands that they wear and the weight they carry across their head and back, and we see them in all kinds of funny locations. So that's an outline of our trip. We'll be spending our first day traveling to Antigua, then a Common Hope visit on Friday. Our work will be from Saturday until Friday. We'll be doing 6 days of surgery, hopefully accomplishing about 100 cases by that time. And Saturday we usually have a free day followed by a farewell dinner, getting together for the last time before we travel home on Sunday. Finally, there will be a few questions in the paperwork that I hand out that ask whether you've ever been disciplined, had to relinquish your privileges, if you've ever used drugs or been charged with a crime. If you have had any of those problems, please let me know as soon as possible, as it certainly affects our ability to have you on the team. I will be sending out, as I mentioned, a trip manuals that has all the details more fleshed out for you. Please, if you have any questions, contact me by email. That's the best way we can communicate. Thank you for your interest and attention, and expect some more follow-up information soon, and respond as quickly as you can to facilitate a good trip for us. Thank you so much. Good day.